watched Love Between Fairy and Devil because I had heard that the love interest is the villain slash anti-hero. I love villains. They're usually a lot more dynamic, interesting, and fun than your typical hero. And that is definitely true in a romantic sense. Think about it. With the hero, the love interest will always have to be, at best, their second priority. Take the love interest hostage and threaten the hero by saying, the girl or the city. If you pick the city, the girl will die. If you pick the girl, the city will burn. What happens then? We have 20 minutes of the hero scrambling around like a headless chicken, trying to figure out a solution where both can be saved, and usually by some miracle, he does. But give the same choice to the villain. What would they choose? Love Between Fairy and Devil showcases this choice to the extreme. The drama is about an orchid fairy named Xiao Lanhua abandoning her hero love Qingcang for what the world believes to be one of the greatest evils to have existed, Dongfang Qingcang. The characters are brilliant. The fantasy is breathtaking. I will be rewatching this again. Those three things don't change the fact that this drama is one hot mess. Hi guys, my name is Lexardith and welcome to Hell. There are many issues in this drama. The majority of them are related to 10 characters. Here are the least to the worst offenders. Number 10, Lord Yunsong. In episode 29, we find out that Yunsong is a corrupt, power-loving, warmongering fool, and then nothing happens. The guy deliberately conspired with a known traitor to falsify a testimony and then implicate a foreign country in the hopes of going to war. His brother, Qingcang, finds out, and instead of reporting his brother, he's bemoaning the loss of his friend. It's a missed opportunity because by showing Yunsong's corruption, it could have had a tremendous effect throughout the entire drama. So why not have Yunsong face the consequences of his actions? Why not have him dethroned, exiled, executed, anything really? Number 9, Xunfang. The sibling dynamic in this drama had tons of potential. It's disappointing that the writers didn't take advantage of it. Sibling relationships are complicated and incredibly dynamic. Once you add in patricide, political rivalry, and jealousy, it only gets more complicated. That being said, it does provide an opportunity to enrich the characters and their development. In the beginning, Xunfang hated his older brother Dongfang Qingcang for killing their father. Considering that this hatred festered for 30,000 plus years, it's understandable that it could have had turned into an obsession. Discovering the truth behind the killing of their father, I don't think that the hatred and obsession would just disappear overnight. Another example is when Xunfang publicly goes against Dongfang Qingcang's relationship with Xiao Lanhua. It was because of Xunfang that Dongfang Qingcang took the punishment of the bone-devouring spikes. It was because of Xunfang that Xiao Lanhua faced 3 days of torture in order to prove herself to the Moon Tribe. And lastly, it was because of Xunfang that Xiao Lanhua ultimately died. Neither instance was ever addressed, except for Xunfang admitting to some guilt to Shangshui. However, those instances should have had at least some impact towards his relationship with his brother, for better or for worse. And it's disappointing that everyone, including Dongfang Qingcang, who Xunfang did all this for, never shows any reaction to his involvement whatsoever. Number 8, Shangshui. One of the first things we learn about Shangshui is that he is fiercely loyal to Dongfang Qingcang. It's that loyalty that really puts two things into question for me: his reaction towards Xunfang and Jie Li. For example, Shangshui knows that Xunfang desired to kill Dongfang Qingcang. Dongfang Qingcang wasn't at all worried about it because he didn't believe Xunfang was capable enough in actually succeeding. Then it was just pushed aside and forgotten. However, it doesn't make sense for Shangshui to just leave it. Regardless of Xunfang's perceived incapability, he has the best opportunity and resources to successfully assassinate his brother. He's the prince and heir, meaning he has unfettered access to both Dongfang Qingcang and the palace. Xunfang was the Moon Supreme during his brother's absence of 30,000 years, meaning he was bound to have allies, connections, and influence that Dongfang Qingcang didn't have. Xunfang had the means, motives, and opportunity. For a guard who is so fiercely loyal to his lord, why wouldn't Shang Shui, at the very least, put Xunfang under surveillance? In regards to Shang Shui's relationship to Jie Li, I don't have much to criticize except their ending. Shang Shui discovers that Jie Li is a spy, and that's it. I was hoping for at least a genuine heart-to-heart between the two, but all we were given was a time skip to 500 years in the future where they're together and have adopted a bunch of kids. It was poorly done. The writers did them dirty. Especially because Shang Shui does begin to suspect that there's probably more to Jie Li's betrayal than what he first thought. And since we, the audience, know that when Shang Shui is loyal, he's loyal. So given his ride or die brand of loyalty, why doesn't he begin an investigation regarding Jie Li's betrayal? Because regardless of his feelings on the matter, he needed to know the details. Jie Li's betrayal affected Dongfang Qingcang, and due to his duty towards the man, wouldn't it make sense for Shang Shui to leave no stone unturned in his pursuit of justice? Number 7, Jie Li. I really wish that there was more focus on Jie Li, especially after it was revealed that her father is a noble from Shu Yintian. Throughout the drama, Jie Li always asserts that she's an orphan. She doesn't want or need anyone. So it would have been nice to see her having to adjust to suddenly having a father that wants and loves her and a sister that doesn't know what to do with her. I also wish that there was a consequence for Jie Li being a spy and traitor. Jie Li was the reason why the Bone Orchid bracelet started killing Xiao Lanhua. I can't see Dongfang Qingcang not investigating exactly how the spirit of Lady Chitty managed to haunt and become a parasite in the bracelet. And once he knows, I can't see him showing mercy. Showing Jie Li's growing and doomed relationship with her father would have brought more empathy and sympathy. Showing the fallout of being a spy would have added more tension to her story. Adding these together, Jie Li on the run for Dongfang Qingcang, battling the guilt of indirectly leading to her friend's death and betraying Shang Shui and reuniting with a father and sister she didn't even know she had, it would have made for an incredibly complex, empathetic, and tragic character. Number 6, Rong Hao. There are 2 things I don't understand about Rong Hao. The first is, why aren't the full extent of his crimes brought to light? Rong Hao was involved in instigating and prolonging a civil war in Qingnian Sea. He killed countless people, both soldiers and civilians from both Shu Yintian and Qingnian Sea at the behest of an evil spirit. He conspired with Yunsheng to implicate Qingnian Sea with his own crimes. And lastly, he killed off the Xilan tribe and then set that blame on Qingnian Sea. So why isn't it all brought to light? Especially when Chang Kang knew that Qingnian Sea is largely innocent. The other thing I don't understand is that if Rong Hao worked with and for Taisi for millennia, why didn't he do more to fight him? Rong Hao did eventually kill Lady Chitty, and yes, he did kill himself in an attempt to bring down Taisui. But why not actively use his knowledge of Taisui and evil qi to his advantage? Why not attempt to redeem both him and his master? Well, not every villain needs to be redeemed, nor should they be. Rong Hao is in a position to make it work. Or, better yet, try for redemption but still falling short of obtaining it. And yeah, you could make the argument that he doesn't care for redemption, he just wants to be with his master, and while that is most certainly true, Rong Hao did destroy whatever legacy his master left behind and turned his back on all of her teachings. I think it could have better served him to atone for his master. When she first died, he couldn't handle it. Have her second death propel him to be a better student deserving of her affection. Number 5, Dongfang Qingcang. I like things to make sense, and there are 3 things that don't make sense about Dongfang Qingcang. The first being his control over hellfire.
可你知想要习得业火得付出什么代价吗？八情绝爱，七情尽去，但凡心里有一丝情根，都无法完全掌控业火。
If even a shred of emotion can ruin his control, why don't we see that? In episode 8, it's shown that Dongfang Qingcang's 7 emotion tree is reblooming. In the next episode though, he has 3 back-to-back fights where he is using Hellfire extensively, but his control is perfect. He's not even breaking a sweat. So my question is, if his emotions are starting to come back, why does he still have perfect control over Hellfire? To make his loss of power seem more realistic, the writers should have Dongfang Qingcang slowly lose control of his power when his 7 emotion tree starts reblooming, and then have every surge of emotion afterward just exacerbating his loss of control. Instead, the writers just had him lose total control when his tree fully bloomed, which contradicts their earlier ruling of a shred of emotion. The second issue regards the bone-devouring spikes. Due to Xunfang's plotting against Xiao Lanhua, Dongfang Qingcang decides to undergo the greatest punishment in Canyon Sea, the bone-devouring spikes, which causes immense pain from midnight to dawn. Dongfang Qingcang goes on to say that he will suffer through it every night until he manages to unseal the 100,000 soldiers sealed by Lady Chitty. However, we only see him suffer through the first night, and then it's forgotten. A day or two later, Xiao Lanhua is taken to undergo 3 days of torture to prove her loyalty to the Moon Supreme and Canyon Sea. In solidarity, Dongfang Qingcang decides to forego drinking an elixir, which would prevent him from feeling Xiao Lanhua's pain. Which is still confusing, by the way, because wouldn't her heart-hiding hairpin and his Yu-Jade ring be enough? Knowing this, logic says that from midnight to dawn, Dongfang Qingcang will be experiencing both his pain from the bone-devouring spikes and Xiao Lanhua's pain from being tortured. But they don't show that. They only show the pain that he's sharing with Xiao Lanhua. After this, there's a period of at most 10 days between Xiao Lanhua's return and her death. We don't see his pain during this point or even after her death. The bone-devouring spikes could have easily had a lot more impact. The writers could have shown how it affected Dongfang Qingcang's relationship with Xunfang and his people, and how it affected his people's perception of Xiao Lanhua. The writers could have shown the consequences of Dongfang Qingcang deciding to add Xiao Lanhua's pain to his own, considering that he willingly and publicly took in the bone-devouring spikes because he loved Xiao Lanhua. Then it would have served as the perfect tool to make Xiao Lanhua believe that he didn't love her, by submitting her to that punishment as well. Which brings me to the issue of the bone orchid. Due to a drop of Lady Chitty's blood contaminating the bone orchid, Lady Chitty's spirit becomes a parasite and feeds off of Xiao Lanhua's spiritual power to resurrect herself. Once Lady Chitty is resurrected, Xiao Lanhua will die of exhaustion. The reason why Dongfang Qingcang can't simply take it off is
这古兰是本座心脉血所化，若他对本座用情不深，那这古兰便是普通的护身法器；但若他对我已生死不渝，那古兰便无法取下。若要强取，会伤及他性命。
Because of this, Dongfang Qingcang decides to make Xiao Lanhua hate him, because then he'll hopefully be able to take off the bone orchid. What I want to know here is, why can't Xiao Lanhua take it off herself? Or why not use the gold eroding powder that Jie Li threatens Jie Yi with? I'm not sure if that powder exists or not, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt due to Jie Yi's reaction. Because if it wasn't an actual thing, I'm pretty sure that Jie Yi just would have laughed it off. However, it's one thing to make Xiao Lanhua hate Dongfang Qingcang, but it's another to decide to sacrifice her, like he makes Xunfang believe he's willing to do. I don't think he was willing to sacrifice her because he did try to stop her death, but it doesn't make sense why he made Xunfang believe he was willing to in the first place. And his little monologue wondering if he had to sacrifice her or not doesn't help matters. I just don't understand, and I honestly think that a 5-minute conversation would have cleared up this entire situation. Number 4, Xiao Lanhua. When Xiao Lanhua is brought back from the dead, she fakes amnesia and pretends that she only remembers her life as the goddess of Xishan and nothing of Xiao Lanhua. She then decides to marry Qingcang to finally defeat the evil spirit Taisi. The goddess of Xishan, Xiyun, was sealed away when she was a child. We only see 2 flashbacks of her. Neither flashback indicates her to be serious. And even if that were the case, if Xiao Lanhua really only remembered her life as Xiyun, she would act like a kid. It's the same issue in regards to her power, control, and knowledge. She would only know what she knew when she was a child. If at this moment Xiao Lanhua believes she's strong enough to combat Taisi after only being reborn for at most a week, why didn't she save her clan when Ronghao killed them? Because Ronghao is definitely weaker than Taisi. And also, why did she even need to marry Qingcang in the first place? She did mention that Qingcang's powers were sealed and only their marriage would unseal them. Whether the marriage actually had to be consummated or not, I have no idea. All I know is that they were technically married, but no powers were unsealed. Another reason why she apparently needed to marry Qingcang was because it's her destiny. The destiny is foretold in 2 places, the Tianji mirror and the god Xuanwu. The Tianji mirror is basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't believe me, here's the proof.
镜中所示皆为预言，能够看见这预言的，定是可以促成这段姻缘的应许之人。
To play devil's advocate, what happens if the person doesn't choose to make that destiny happen in the first place? Or what happens if no one sees it? Are they then free to make their own choices? With Xuanwu, he only says,
你是西山神女，你的爱无私而广博，你终将承担起你的命运，你注定消弭仇恨，护佑苍生。
How does marrying Qingcang help with that? Throughout the entire drama, he only shows lackluster skills in fighting. He easily submits when pressured, and he's prone to running away than actually doing his job. If Xiao Lanhua's destiny is to cease hatred and protect the people, won't it be better to marry Dongfang Qingcang? Historically, marriages existed to create alliances. Since Shu Yuntian and Kang Yanxi are at war, and Shu Yuntian is the aggressor, doesn't it mean more for world peace that Xiao Lanhua marries Dongfang Qingcang? I mean, they could easily call it reparations, right? Number 3. Qingcang. Because Qingcang is the god of war, and it was the previous god of war that managed to seal Dongfang Qingcang, everyone has it in their heads that Qingcang is the only one that can fight and defeat Dongfang Qingcang. The issue here is that Qingcang and Dongfang Qingcang only fought against each other 3 times, and Qingcang lost every single time. I want to emphasize their first 2 fights. In episode 9, Qingcang discovers Dongfang Qingcang is in Arbiter Hall. Keep in mind that by this point, Dongfang Qingcang hasn't really fought in 30,000 years. He hasn't really sustained hellfire for any significant amount of time during that time period either. So it's logical to assume that he might not be at the top of his game. Qingcang, on the other hand, has actively been fighting, conquering, and doing whatever a god of war is supposed to do. It's obvious who should be the clear winner. Qingcang fails spectacularly. In the first fight, Qingcang is only saved by the fact that Dongfang Qingcang has to save Xiao Lanhua. And after that, Dongfang Qingcang goes off against the entirety of Shu Yuntian, and then he fights Qingcang again. 3 back-to-back fights with the strongest fighters Shu Yuntian has. And Dongfang Qingcang doesn't break a sweat. He's not even fighting them seriously. And yet, by the end of each fight, Qingcang is injured, weak, and needing help to hobble back home. Where does Shu Yuntian get the idea that he's their lord and savior from the devil Dongfang Qingcang? Because the dude honestly sucks. When Xiao Lanhua mentions to Qingcang that his powers are sealed, I was like, maybe the guy will be redeemed after all. But they don't touch on that again. And even after the wedding, when he's supposed to be helping his wife defeat the greatest evil in the land, he just blows up his fingers and calls it a job well done. So yeah, Qingcang was disappointing. When I see him, I don't see an embodiment of war. War is fierce, cruel, brutal. It doesn't take prisoners. War is finding your enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them. War is rebellion. War is when it's you against the world, you don't back down. Qingcang doesn't do any of that. He does, I admit, begin to grow a backbone, but it was a little too late. Because instead of actually doing his jobs in regards to Rong Hao and his brother Yunxiong, he just cries and screams. As a literal embodiment of war, your actions must speak louder than your words. What's the point in having an opinion when you do nothing to back it up? Number 2, Lady Chitty. Being the previous god of war, the goal of both antagonists, and being connected to Xiao Lanhua's past, I honestly expected a lot more from Lady Chitty. I was honestly hoping that the former badassery of the title God of War would be restored, but there wasn't anything of the like. The main issue is that Lady Chitty did more for the plot dead than alive. Being dead caused a hurdle in Dongfang Qingcang's plan to unseal his 100,000 soldiers. Being dead cemented the hostility between Xu Yintian and King Yanxi. What did her being alive actually do? Nothing. Why didn't Lady Chitty take a more active role against Taixi? Instead of reporting to Yunxiong, where there was almost zero chance that he'd believe her, why not go to the people that definitely would, such as the goddess of Xishan, whose role and duty is to suppress Taixi, or Dongfang Qingcang, since it's common knowledge that he is protective over the goddess. I was hoping to see a reunion between Lady Chitty, Xiao Lanhua, and Dongfang Qingcang. It was said multiple times that Lady Chitty and the goddess of Xishan were close enough to consider the other as family. So why not give Xiao Lanhua that connection to her past and family? And it would have been hilarious to see Lady Chitty and Dongfang Qingcang interacting together because 1, they were enemies, and 2, they were married in the mortal realm because she mistook their connection for love. Number 1, Taixi. We're introduced to Taixi towards the end of episode 15, and for the scenes he was present in, Taixi was largely underwhelming. The general rule of thumb when you want to create a villain is you have to show why the villain is the villain. Don't tell or summarize their actions, but show them. We're told that Taixi is born from the darkness of everyone's hearts, that he causes mayhem, mass hysteria, and death to all realms, but we don't see that. When Taixi escapes his seal, he's just off brooding somewhere because Lady Chitty was killed. How does that scream danger? And this might be treading a bit into philosophy, but can Taixi even be killed? If he's darkness, doesn't that mean that he's there to stay? As the saying goes, for there to be light, there must be darkness. In other words, there has to be a balance. To make Taixi seem more like the villain extraordinaire he's supposed to be, he should have been 1, a lot more emotional. I say emotional because the heart has long since been associated with emotion. And if Taixi is born from the darkness of everyone's hearts, then I'm expecting him to be the worst version of humanity. And 2, Taixi should have been affecting a lot more people. As it is, he only ever interacted with 5 people: Rong Hao, Die Yi, Lady Chitty, Dongfang Qingcang, and Xiao Lanhua. Taixi could have affected and tempted so many people. He could have tempted Yunxiong with his greed and hunger for war and power. He could have tempted Xunfang with his love for his brother and tribe. He could have tempted Qingcang with his impossible love for Xiao Lanhua. He could have tempted Jie Li with her desire for freedom. He could have tempted Shangxi with his need to protect Dongfang Qingcang and Jie Li. But Taixi didn't. He was just an underwhelming, glittery black cloud. Most, if not all of these problems could be fixed with one thing: pacing. Pacing determines how fast or how slow a story is developing. You go too fast, you have a confused audience. You go too slow, you have a frustrated audience. For the first 27 episodes, love between Fairy and Devil had pretty good pacing. In the last 9 episodes, though, it was just too much information. The drama easily needed, at the minimum, another 5 episodes. Throughout the story, they threw so many tidbits that I honestly wanted to know more of. Lady Yan and Chongqua, the leaders of King Yanxi and Xu Yantian, Dongfang Qingcang having the soul of King Kong. I want to know who that is and why exactly that is so important. Chong Kong's mother, who apparently abandoned him and Yunsheng and gave them both a complex. And lastly, the journey Dongfang Qingcang and Chong Kong took to resurrect Xiao Lanhua. Despite all this is still an amazing show. I laughed and I cried. There were moments that I was screaming at the screen. What I absolutely loved is how Dongfang Qingcang and Xiao Lanhua's love is truly all or nothing. Dongfang Qingcang is completely okay with letting the world burn as long as Xiao Lanhua is safe. He's willing to go head to head with his family, advisors, and his country just to be with Xiao Lanhua. And the same is true in the reverse. Xiao Lanhua was willing to go against her former love and tribe to defend Dongfang Qingcang, and they both go against destiny. It's rare to find a love story where both are ride or die for each other, and I absolutely love it.